All right. Hi, everybody. As you can see, I'm in a different location this week, which means that this week's video is going to be a little different, and our preview of Second Corinthians coming up is going to be a little different this week. More on that later. But first, for our review, I just wanted to give us a big picture of Paul's correspondence with the church in Corinth, which we have in First and Second Corinthians. The relationship started on Paul's third missionary journey when Paul goes to Corinth and preaches, and he stays there about 18 months. We see that in Acts chapter 18. Sometime after leaving, Paul sends a letter to the Corinthians with further instructions about how to live as Christians. He references this letter in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 9. Now, we don't have this letter today. Apparently, it caused some misunderstanding that Paul needed to clear up, which is part of the reason he wrote 1 Corinthians. Another reason Paul wrote First Corinthians was because Paul's friend Stephanas and some others went to visit Paul in Ephesus, and they brought reports of quarreling and division in Corinth. So Paul needs to address that. He talks about that in First Corinthians chapter 1. Thirdly, Paul receives a letter from the Corinthians. He mentions this letter in 1 Corinthians 7. And they had questions about marriage, food offered to idols, spiritual gifts, and what to do with the collection they had been taking. Now, again, we don't have this letter either. So Paul writes 1 Corinthians to clarify what was in his first letter, a letter we don't have, to address the reports of division, and to answer questions from their letter to him. Again, another letter we don't have. Then Paul sends Timothy to Corinth to check on things. This is mentioned in 1 Corinthians 4 and also 16. And Timothy returns to Paul, bringing disturbing news from Corinth. There is still division. Now, Paul had originally planned to go up to Macedonia and then down the coast to Corinth. But when he hears about the problems in Corinth, Paul changes his travel plans. He sails straight to Corinth with plans to go up to Macedonia and then back down to Corinth a second time on his way back. He starts to get into this change of plans in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, which you'll read this week. But after sailing straight to Corinth and he arrives there, Paul is subjected to some hurtful attacks from someone in the church, with other Corinthians offering little defense. So after leaving, Paul decides not to make what he calls another painful visit. This is from 2 Corinthians 2, verse 1. So he goes up to Macedonia and he decides not to go back down the coast to visit them again. He just skips the second trip and he goes right back to Ephesus. After getting back to Ephesus, Paul writes what he calls a severe letter to the Corinthians. He mentions this in 2 Corinthians 2, reprimanding them for being so obstinate and disrespectful to his pastoral authority. Now, much like those two other letters, we don't have this severe letter from Paul, but it's referenced in 2 Corinthians. Now, finally, after some time, there's some good news. A man named Titus brings word that the Corinthians have repented and they're seeking to honor Paul's authority. This is mentioned in 2 Corinthians 7 and 13. So Paul rejoices when he hears this, even telling the Corinthians to forgive the person who attacked him during his last visit, which he tells them to do in 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 5 to 11. All right, so Second Corinthians was written at the tail end of all of this, after several exchanges of letters. Now, this is a lot of information on the background of these letters, but what I want us to see is how deeply personal these letters are. These letters reveal an intimate and rather tumultuous relationship between a pastor and a church. And this is a good reminder that the Christian faith takes place in real life. The Christian faith is not some abstract set of principles. I studied world religions in college, and I can say that there are other religions which tend to be more abstract and theoretical, especially Eastern religions like Taoism or Buddhism or Hinduism. That's not to say those faiths have no impact on the people who practice them, but our scriptures, the very documents which define our faith, are rooted in history. These are real people who lived in a real time in a real place. They had real relationships with each other. And as you can see, those relationships were far from perfect at times. So I think it's interesting that God has given us guidance for how we are to live as Christians, not just by giving us a list of commands or abstract theoretical principles, but by telling us stories of those who walked the road before us. I think this is something unique about our Christian faith, and I just wanted to share that and focus on that. All right, now looking ahead, I'm going to do something A little different this week, and it's something I haven't done in 8 months of doing this series, and that's that I'm not going to do a chapter by chapter summary of the upcoming book of Second Corinthians. Now, the main reason is just my schedule. I have had plumbers at my mom's house all this week. Next week, I'm in the office only 2 days, and then I'm off to a pastor's conference. My family's on vacation the week after that, and then we're kicking off our fall program, and I have to give some attention to that. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to refer us to a video from a group called the Bible Project. They are excellent. People at the Bible Project are absolutely masters at what they do. And if you haven't seen them before, I think you're really going to enjoy what they do. Um, Now, you will notice a slight difference between what they do and what I do in our videos. They put a whole book of the Bible into one video. So in 7 to 8 minutes, you're going to get all of Second Corinthians. And it's a lot. You're probably going to want to watch the video twice. Whereas what I do is I just take 5 chapters a week for Monday through Friday. I go over those, and then the next week I'll take another 5 chapters. But the videos from the Bible Project are so good, and I'm just going to lean on that for Second Corinthians, maybe even for First and Second Timothy, which are the next couple of short books that we're going to read. We've been doing this series on time, and so I've found that this week I just have to practice what I preach. I have a lot of good options in front of me of what I could do for the church, and I think for the first time in 8 months, I need to pause these videos. The ones from the Bible Project are going to do us very well. And then I certainly plan to pick back up again, probably in earlier mid-September, and we will get right back on track again. So I appreciate your understanding with that. I'm just on the run a lot these next few weeks. But I'm grateful to be here with you. I probably will send you another email next week just to check in and send this video again from the Bible Project. And I will see you soon. All right. God bless you, friends. Thank you.